Hi, I'm Amy Parsons, president of Colorado State University and host of the Next 150 podcast. We have so many remarkable people in our community, and this is where we're going to hear their stories. We're going to get their perspectives on CSU's next 150 years and gather their very best advice for today's CSU students. Let's get started, Rams. Well, we're kicking off the podcast with a very special guest, a good friend of mine, someone I admire greatly, CSU alumna and trailblazer, Jenny Cavnar. You likely know Jenny's voice from Major League Baseball broadcasting. Jenny just joined the Oakland A's this season as their play-by-play announcer, making her the first female primary play-by-play voice in MLB history. She previously served 12 years as backup play-by-play announcer, pregame and postgame host, and reporter for regional TV coverage for our Colorado Rockies. Jenny is a 5-time Emmy Award winner and was the first woman to win National Sports Media Association Colorado Sportscaster of the Year in 2021, and she also made baseball history in 2018 as the first woman in 25 years to call play-by-play for a Major League Baseball game. Jenny was the first female to provide analysis for a series of National League games in the radio booth and can be heard as a voice on MLB Network radio on Sirius XM through the regular season and postseason coverage. In addition to her work in baseball, Jenny calls men's and women's college basketball on FS1 and Pac-12 networks, and occasionally she even calls CSU basketball games. I get so excited when I spot Jenny Cavnar in Moby Arena, which brings me to one of the best parts about Jenny. Jenny's a proud CSU alumna with dual degrees in business administration and speech communications. And earlier this year, we announced that Jenny is our inaugural presidential executive in residence. Welcome to the Next 150 podcast, Jenny. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me. This is so cool. Like 150 years of Colorado State.
150 years.
It's amazing. So it's really neat to be a part of it. Thanks.
Well, I'm always so happy to see you. There's so much ground for us to explore today. So we're going to get started with something fun for our first question. So each episode, we're going to have a guest pull out a chip from this bowl, shake it, and pick out a number, and that'll determine our first question.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah, ready.
Okay. I don't want to cheat. Okay, 3.
Got it. If your life had a theme song, what would it be?
Oh, I think lately my theme song would probably be Bruce Springsteen, Born to Run. Because I am running to the airport, I'm running to school pickup, kids' soccer games, I'm running to a Major League Baseball stadium around the country, I'm running up to Fort Collins sometimes. I am running. And probably more of like a tornado running than, someone actually running, but always with a goal in mind. And I think that would probably be it right now.
I love it. And probably some comfortable shoes, hopefully.
Yes, always. Good sneakers.
So follow-up question, would that also be your baseball walk-up song, Born to Run?
Well, that'd be fun because you're running the bases. So you kind of get in that mindset. But I think I'd probably go with something more like 90s hip hop. I just can't think of a tune right now.
All right, we'll come back. We'll come back to that.
Here's my secret that I'll let you in on. This is my nightmare, by the way. It's people asking you random questions that you have to have an answer to. Like, what's your favorite book? What's your favorite movie? What's your favorite song? Like, I have sweaty palms right now. I don't get nervous about a lot of things, but like having to pick a favorite something in your lifetime is very nerve-wracking.
I should ask you, and in the future I will ask you, what are some of your favorite walk-up songs for some of the players that you covered?
I mean,
because I think you can tell a lot about a player.
Charlie
right?
Blackmon's probably my favorite, just because it's been around for so long and the crowd loves it.
Everybody loves it.
I think when there's fan interaction, it's a good song.
Yeah, I totally agree. Okay, so let's get started with your journey and your relationship to Colorado State University. You and I are both CSU alums, which is awesome. Tell us how you chose CSU in the first place for college.
Well, clearly it's because our favorite color is green.
I know.
So
for
I
life.
think that was one of the reasons. I think, honestly, looking back, growing up in Colorado, going to high school, I had big dreams of leaving the state. I was going to go far away. I was going to play lacrosse somewhere, and I was going to do everything on my own and, far away from my family and start a new life. And not in a bad way. I just was ready for kind of that independent trek. And so it came down to the last minute. I applied to CSU in addition to some other schools. My dad went to Colorado State. We definitely had Ram items around the house. We watched football games. So we were familiar. But for me, it was like coming down to the wire, and it was this gut feeling of like, I think I want to go there And if it's not for me, I can always move on. But like the second I got on campus, I felt at home. And I think it was because of the opportunities that were going to be laid out for me. I still got to play lacrosse. It was at the club level, but it provided me the opportunity of not being a D1 athlete to get involved in the athletic department and start covering sports in a media aspect, which is clearly what I wanted to do and I knew I wanted to do. So I worked a lot. I worked at CTV. I worked off campus at the Clear Channel radio station. And I got involved in clubs. I double majored. So it just all of a sudden became this environment that had a little bit of everything for me to do.
So you were a double major then in business and speech communications. Yeah. Did you choose those majors because you already knew that you wanted to go into sports broadcasting?
Yeah, so I actually, when I was accepted into the business school, I started that route. I was heavily involved with DECA when I was in high school. Yeah. So it was kind of a background of mine that I wanted to pursue marketing and sports marketing in a way. But I was like, how is this going to intersect with broadcasting? So a couple of years in, I went down the journalism route. And I realized quickly, like, that's a lot of writing. And I'm more a talker. What's that major? And so they quickly shuffled me over to the speech communication department. And I met some really wonderful people and just feel like, again, the home aspect of this is where I belong for a major. But I had already gone down the road of a business major. So I wanted to just complete that and also have that under my belt. And I think it served me very well because in sports broadcasting and in our jobs as you continue on, you have to sell yourself a lot. And you're also selling a team a lot. So I think the aspect of marketing as a degree kind of helped.
Yeah, so backing up from that, it sounds like you decided that this was the route for you in some way at an early age.
Yeah.
When did you first start thinking that you wanted to go into sports and potentially broadcasting as a career?
Yeah, my mom always says when we were young kids, my brother would pick up the business section of the newspaper and I always just grab the sports section. And I think it's how we grew up. My dad was a longtime high school baseball coach and we were often at the field. I got involved playing sports really early. And so when I realized you could work in sports, I'm like, wow, that would be so fun. Let's go down that path. And then watching different women in the state, Marcia Neville was the longtime prep reporter on Channel 4. And so I would see her at my dad's games and she often got to be like the first one on the field. I'm like, that's cool. And it really clicked for me watching Monday Night Football and seeing Melissa Stark and just having that representation of like, oh, there's a woman doing this big job at a national football game. Yeah. Like that would be cool. So it was probably like 16 or 17 when I decided that's it.
Amazing.
That's what I'm going to do.
We'll get back to that issue of representation in a minute.
Yeah.
I love hearing how all different aspects of CSU helped prepare you for your career, work and your studies and that sense of home and that place and getting involved in the athletics department. It sounds like those are experiences that really prepared you for what's next, maybe even not knowing what's next, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what this campus provides is the opportunity, if you're willing to get involved, and then also to experience. I mean, doing CTV was my beginnings of like getting on camera, finding my voice, figuring out what, being a sports broadcaster looked like and sounded like. And I could fail at that level too, which is important to kind of learn how to fail and take moments from that to turn into, okay, let's give it another rep. Let's go again. Let's learn how to succeed.
That is just so well distilled into what the value of higher education is.
Yes.
Right? Of being able to fail and to test and to apply what you're learning in the classroom to actual experience. So I love hearing how that played out for you. And you're a broadcasting pro at several sports, but now in Major League Baseball. Why baseball of all of the sports? How did you end up being the Major League Baseball?
Yeah, it's mind-blowing to me too. Like even though I grew up in the game with my dad, being a high school baseball coach, I think seeing Melissa Stark, if you ask any of my friends in college, they're like, oh yeah, Jenny said she wanted to be a sideline reporter in football. It was so specific to seeing what Melissa Stark was doing on TV. And so that was the dream. That was the goal for me out of college, was to pursue football more than any other sport. Ending up in local sports, at some juncture in my career, I kind of covered everything. And really it was a chance encounter to get into baseball. There was an opening in San Diego. And at that time I had an agent and he called and was like, why don't you just go meet with this, executive producer, talk about the job, and just see if it's something for you. Mm-hmm. And so I remember like sitting down at this lunch and we were just chatting it up, and he's like, so like, do you know how to keep score? And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, duh. Like, who doesn't know how to keep score of a game, right? So I was like, oh yeah, I've done that before. He's like, oh really? And I don't know, we just started talking ball, and he was like, it's really refreshing to hear like you grew up in this game, like you know this game. And he took a chance on me. We later had a conversation a couple years into my job. He's like, you were really green and you were really young, but I saw right away your passion for this sport and for this game. And so I think even the minute he hired me, I had no idea, the trajectory of my career and where it would take me. And it's just crazy when you think back.
Thank goodness for all of us that he did, right?
Yes,
that he saw you for what you were.
Exactly.
And just so talented, right? And so much potential.
Nice, but
it's true. I mean, and baseball specifically, when he asks, do you know how to keep score?
Yeah.
There's a lot to baseball.
Yeah.
In keeping score. I mean, almost more so, I think, than any other sport. It's very particular how you keep score. There's so many statistics for each player, each team, so much history, so much kind of magic and lore in baseball that doesn't exist anywhere else.
Sure.
And I've always wondered how you go about preparing for a game. How much homework are you doing before a game and studying each player and their stats and the teams and their previous matchups and all of that? Just what goes into being the primary play caller for a game today?
That's a great question. I think it's something that I'm continually learning, right? Like learning the most efficient way to go about doing it, because I think there is paralysis by analysis. You can go down some wormholes with baseball. You just talked about it, right? Like you can get on a stat and you can go down this analytics path, and 3 hours later, you're like, oh my gosh, I had so much more work to do. I've kind of found what works for me ahead of a series, breaking the season down and how to prepare for another team, how these teams match up, the pitching matchups. And, there is a lot of reading to the job and just a lot of staying up and homework. So I think it's more of the continue education of like the season builds on itself, which is so great. And so staying in that, having the notes prepared, like on a game day, for example, I'm waking up, I'm starting with the pitching matchups. I'm going into who's hot, who's not kind of thing in terms of like, who's having good weeks, who's really struggling, why are they struggling? And then maybe some storylines that are more human interest storylines and incorporating those. Baseball's changed so much. The human interest story, there was a lot more time in the game to kind of be able to share those. And now with the pitch clock, it's the broadcasting aspect has changed drastically. We used to kind of have a rule of thumb, don't start a story with 2 outs. And now it's like, don't start a story with 1 out. You're never going to get back to it, or you're never going to finish it and be able to get back to it. So then it's the weave. Like once the game starts, the game is the game, and it will tell you where to go. And that's the beauty of it. You can prepare all you want. You're never going to get all of that into a broadcast. But once the game begins, you might have really studied up on something that shows itself early. Again, like a pitching matchup that favors where the team is at, or this team's really been struggling and being able to get runners in scoring position home. Well, they're doing that now, and then being able to go down that rabbit hole. So it's just having an open-ended, like kind of that choose your own adventure book, and you have all your storylines in your list, and then the game will tell you where to go.
And how different is that from other sports? It seems to
So
me,
different.
Baseball has so much magic and lore in the stories that play out during the game itself that other sports just don't.
Yeah. And
have
sometimes
that kind of almost romance to the game.
You're so right. And sometimes like something will happen in the game that you weren't prepared for that becomes this greater picture of like, this is the first time this has ever happened in 30 years. And now you're doing in-game research and trying to get back to that. And who is that person? And now we're talking about that person. And you're right. It is. It's so connected to history that you have to be brushed up on it. And sometimes you're learning as you're going. And it's really cool that it weaves all into one tiny moment that you might not have been preparing for. But being different than other sports, there's so much action, specifically in basketball, that your preparation is what's going to happen in this game statistically on the court, maybe some side stories of what's going on in a human interest level. Football, same thing. It's about the down. It's about the minute, the moment. And so I just, baseball it's a little more open-ended.
It unfolds.
Yes.
In a very different way.
Yeah.
Now you are now the primary play-by-play broadcaster for the A's. How is that different for you now than the work that you were doing with the Colorado Rockies?
Yeah. So with the Rockies, I primarily hosted our pre and post game show, and then I was backing up Drew Goodman. So think about like a pinch hitter. You're kind of on the bench for a long time, and then you got to get in and you got to get a hit in that moment. And so it's kind of more challenging to do play-by-play because the way I prepare for a role of pre and post game host is, very different than doing the game every day. So now you're doing the game every day, you're building the storylines, you're sharing what's important, and you're building the moment. You really have to, in the moment, be the voice. You have to tell the fans what to get excited about, what's important in the game. And so a lot of that is just really like locking in. There's a lot of mental preparation to just be in that 3 hours, 2.5 hours, whatever you're given. As the voice of the team.
A lot of focus.
It really
the
is.
entire time.
It really is. There's a lot of focus that has to happen for sure.
Well, you've had a lot of firsts for women in MLB broadcasting. And after getting this primary play-by-play announcer role at the A's, you were on the Today Show, which, first of all, must have been fun.
It was pretty cool.
To be on the Today Show. And you mentioned while you were on the show that we, as women in Major League Baseball, are chipping away, kind of opening the door for the next generation and really having that idea that representation matters. So you mentioned that previously. You were able to do what you're doing today and be inspired because you saw yourself represented by other women who went before you on TV. So talk a little bit more about why it's important to have female representation, not just in MLB, but in professional sports in general. On television.
Yeah, I think all you have to do is go to a game and look around at who's in the crowd.
Yeah.
There's a lot of women that are sports fans. And I had a woman just come up to me on our last road trip to San Diego. She waited by the bus. She called me over. She had tears in her eyes. And she goes, I just wanted to meet you. I'm 68 years old, and I've been waiting a lifetime to hear a woman call my favorite sport.
Oh my gosh.
And I was blown away by that. Honestly, there's more women who are older who talk about the admiration of this job and wishing that this was available for them to even know about as a career. And I think that means so much because I'm hopefully doing something now that they weren't able to do to provide that opportunity for the next generation who will never know that that wasn't an option for them. When I first called the game in 2018, I had women reach out to me who were calling games at the minor league level, and I didn't even know that was happening. And they were like, you just gave us hope for everything we've been dealing with to try and make this happen. Wow. And one of them has since become a play-by-play voice for the Baltimore Orioles.
Oh my gosh.
And she got that job before I even got the A's job. And so it matters. It's important. It's exciting. But to me, it's really about creating opportunity that just maybe didn't exist before. I also want to be good at this job. And I know I have a long way to go. And I know the people who made the decision to hire me believe in that and believe in the growth that can happen in that. But I feel so blessed that I get to be a part of baseball. I get to be a part of this game. I get to be a part of storytelling of these players. And hopefully there'll be more women working in the game too in the years to come.
You get to be a part of baseball. You get to be a part of history.
Yeah.
Of baseball history.
Yeah.
Of sports history, of Colorado State University history.
Yeah.
And we're just so proud of you for that because you are so good at what you do and inspiring people. And, I'm a big proponent of women in sport and our collegiate athletes at CSU and all of CSU sports. So I feel like it is a unifying force for people. It cuts across all differences, political differences, social differences. People who are fans come together in that moment to cheer on their team. And I think that that's so important for society today, to be able to have sports, whether it's collegiate sports or it's professional sports, where we all come together in a unified way to cheer on our team. And I'm just curious how you see that from the broadcasting booth, that sort of power of sports to to really unify people and bring them together.
Yeah, it really does. I think my biggest joy in being a broadcaster is not necessarily what you see from the first pitch to the last pitch, but it's the amount of work that goes into those athletes getting ready to be there. The grind of it, especially in baseball, right?
Yeah.
Going 1 for 3, like having a batting average where you only get a hit 33% of the time is the success rate. And the amount of work that goes into getting to that level of even trying to be like a 250 hitter in the game these days, which is really hard. It's endless. The work is endless. The grind is endless. The mental component is endless. And to watch these guys go about their craft and work to get to a point to be ready to put on a show, really, for fans, it's incredible. It's incredible the amount of dedication that goes into being a professional athlete. And so getting to witness that firsthand is really cool to me. And then in the competition aspect, I think it's the idea that, especially in baseball more than any other sport, you can't get too high and you can't get too low as a player out there, right? Because you're going to have moments where you're the hero of the game and you're going to have slumps and you're going to go through them. It's going to be really hard, but you have to always be the same. And then you have to be the same for the fans. And the fans are going to want you to show up for them. And they're going to want your autograph. They're going to want pictures. They're going to demand of you. And then they want the show. They want to see in the game. They want something to cheer for. And so it's very interesting, the ripple effect that these humans that are working tirelessly to do something in their profession to make sure that their value and their worth, they can stay in this game, also derives on the happiness of all these people that have come together, right?
Yeah.
And that's, in a way, community. We're cheering for each other, but it takes a lot of work in life to get to a point that you want to be. It takes failure, it takes successes. And so I think it's just this beautiful game that kind of is all encompassing to that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, it's obvious, I think, to everyone listening why we chose you to be our first presidential executive in residence at CSU, which is a program that's really designed to inspire our students to infuse excellence across the university, to be inspired by people like you and the excellent work that you're doing. And the way that you just explained the excellence of the athletes that you're covering is really inspiring as well. What are you hoping that our students can take away from working with you and hearing your story and your journey?
Yeah, I hope they can just take away that their passions that they have now can be maintained. Their dreams can come true. Their goals can be reached. And they might even not know what their goals are yet, right? I think I left Colorado State having a pretty good idea with what I wanted to do. But again, that path was not linear. It took me on so many different turns. And it took me up a mountain to a place that I never even thought I could go. But the foundation here is really what gave me that ability to know that once I was in the challenges, in the moments, like wondering where I was going, like I was going to get there, because I had 4 years here that showed me, again, through failure and through success, that I could end up with an ultimate goal, which of course here was degrees, relationships, community, leaving with all those things. And so I really hope that my experience here can inspire someone who's currently in this experience, whether they're wandering, whether they have a very specific path and goal in mind, that they can just be inspired by someone that also went here and walked in their shoes and walked on this campus. And they can walk away going, I can have a big dream and I can go for it too.
They can't help but be inspired by hearing that.
Oh, man.
It's just amazing. And I think you're right. At this age, our college students, they can't know what the path looks like going forward. It makes sense now. I think you and I would both agree that looking back on our journeys, a lot of it makes sense. Oh, that's why I tried that.
Yeah.
That's why I took that job. That's why I met that person who offered me that. But you can never tell looking forward.
Right.
So it's having that foundation, right, that we're trying to provide here
Absolutely.
at CSU.
And I think like growing up in the 70s and 80s, a good cross stitch that was like hanging on your grandmother's wall or your parents' wall or something. If you look at the picture, it makes sense. If you look at the back of it, the yarn is so messy and how it gets there, and it's all tangled up. And I think of that as life. I think of that as your relationships, what you pursue as a career, what you pursue in your interests. Like, it's never just going to completely match up. But then when you're able to look at the end result, it does, right?
Makes sense.
And it's this great full picture. And so I think that's the beauty of being on the other side and being able to share the perspective of saying it's going to be okay. I know that you feel confused or you feel like you're never going to get there, but like you will. And I've been in those shoes too.
here's my final question, I guess, is about students. We always come back to students.
Yeah.
And, students and student success is always our top priority at Colorado State University. It drives everything that we do. What advice would you give to today's students who are just starting out?
Yeah.
We're about to welcome another class of students. Thousands and thousands of fresh-faced college freshmen coming to CSU. What advice would you give them as they're just starting on their college journey?
I think, something I keep coming back to in my own life, as I'm now a working mom and I'm in this new job and career, is be where your feet are. It's one of the hardest things to do, I think, especially in our society today, right? We're always on our phones. We're always attached to email. We're always connected digitally, but also those relationships in front of you, whether it's someone you're going to meet in your dorm or in a class or a professor or a coach or someone you're going to bump into at the rec center every single day when you go at the same time, those are important. That's why you're at college. That's why you're on campus, the connection and the relationships. And I still feel so lucky that I've walked away with so many of those friendships that are just as valuable in my life today as they were 20 plus years ago. And even, certain professors, whether we keep in touch or not, the value that they had in those moments because I was connected to them. It's the hardest thing we have in society today, but to try and just enjoy the moments, the good, the bad. They're building you for something.
Okay, Rams, did you hear that? That was excellent advice from Jenny Cavnar. So thank you, Jenny, for being on today's podcast episode. We're so proud of you as a Ram, and you just continue to make us all fans of you and all of the teams and the players that you cover. We are fans as well, following you along on your journey. So thank you for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. And
thanks for having me. Go Rams.
Go Rams. Yeah. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening. I'm Amy Parsons, president of Colorado State University, and you're listening to CSU's The Next 150, where we explore what comes next for CSU by chatting with change makers who are already leading the charge and shaping our next 150 years. I'm gathering their very best advice for today's CSU students. Stay tuned to wherever you get podcasts for our next outstanding conversation. Go Rams!